Hello, and thank you for attending our presentation, Parenting for Resilience. We put together this presentation specifically for our scholarship students. As a single mother myself and a scholarship recipient and now working on this project, I understand that single parent families face unique challenges that other types of families don't necessarily face. And so it was important to me to share information and tips and resources that fit our needs better than blanket resources and broad tips for parenting and thriving families. Today, we're going to be talking about understanding risk and resilience, family systems, and family stress broadly. We're just going to get a basic understanding of what that looks like so that we can move into some more practical tips for caring for ourselves as parents and for our children, and how we can support both ourselves and our kids to move from surviving to thriving and building resilience in spite of challenge. And then we'll move on to some concrete resources, some partner organizations that can be helpful. And if there is anything that you think of, anything that you need that you do not see here, please let me know. And we are always seeking to expand our offerings and make sure we meet people where they're at. So risk and resilience. Risk is, I feel like, a pretty harsh word, but essentially it is just things that make life challenging. And a lot of times those things are outside of our control. And unfortunately, the research and the science has learned that those risk factors, those things outside of our control, or those challenging circumstances that we face, can affect the rest of our lives or other outcomes in our life. And resilience is kind of the opposite of that. It is thriving despite those challenges, overcoming barriers, meeting our goals and our milestones despite challenge. Risk factors associated, or risk factors that are especially important for single parent families: low socioeconomic resources, conflict. This can be with a co-parent, this can be in other relationships in our life, with stressful work environments, or even conflict with our kids. Poor mental health, depression, anxiety, trauma, a lack of supportive relationships in our personal lives, educational attainment, how much education we were able to access, and stress. Stress is pretty obvious and pretty important. It spills out into many areas of our lives, and it is very familiar to single parent families when you're the primary breadwinner and the primary parent and the primary homemaker and all of the things all of the time. And it's important to note here that socioeconomic risk isn't just about how much money we make. It's the resources that we have access to. It's stable housing, safe neighborhoods, access to healthy food, healthcare, childcare, education, our emergency reserves, resources to deal with challenges that life throws to us. And resilience is the ability to problem solve, to take on these challenges, and to continue to live our lives and continue to meet our goals and be happy, healthy, well-adjusted despite all of these things. And something we're going to talk about later is the idea of protective factors, which are essentially anti-risk. So if a risk factor is high conflict, maybe we have a really high conflict co-parent, but we have a really awesome network of friends and neighbors that are super supportive. That is a protective factor for us. So when we talk about risk and resilience, we often can imagine balancing a scale. So on one side of the scale is risk factors. And so when we want to address those challenges and build up resilience, we want to put a lot of protective factors on the other side of the scale. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next couple of slides. Next, we're going to talk about family systems and family stress, which are just frameworks to understand experiences and how risk factors and protective factors and resilience and individual behaviors in families all interact and work together to create lived experience. So family stress theory, or the family stress model, essentially addresses how families respond when there is a challenge or a conflict or an adverse event. And part of the component is resources, which is what we have to support us. Do we have community? Do we have family? Do we have financial resources? Do we have internal resources, like just a really wonderful ability to seek help or to problem solve or to take positive perspectives on issues? And that kind of fits into the next factor, which is how families interpret their stressors, how catastrophic things feel, how we rise to meet the challenge, what in temperamental and internal resources we have to see us through those challenges. And all of those together work into how the family adapts to this crisis or conflict or change. In family systems theory, kind of explains how interconnected individuals and the family unit as a whole are, and how the symbiosis between family members as individuals and the family unit work together. So the key points to understand from these theories is that what happens with one family member impacts everybody else. Individuals tend to fall into different roles in their families, and these roles and our needs as families and as individuals create patterns in our families that seek balance. And the more that we understand these, the more that we can ensure that these are roles and patterns that fit our needs and are happy, healthy, and thriving for everyone, or identify ways that we might want to change these roles and patterns in our families, especially when we are adapting to conflict or adverse events. As promised, we're kind of circling back to talk about protective factors and how we can seek out and support these protective factors for ourselves, for our families as a whole, in our communities, and especially for our children and for their development. And Freud is a little bit right here, and it all, not all, but a lot of it does come back to the mother. You've heard the cliche that you cannot pour from an empty cup, and for the most part, the research supports this. Mother's mental health, mother's educational attainment, mother's job quality all tend to affect how our children are doing, which makes sense, right? We think back to the family stress model, especially in single parent families. If mom is the only one holding it down and she's stressed and she's stressed and she's stressed and she is not coping well, or it's just too much for a person to cope with, our emotional and our psychological state are affected, our ability to parent and to show up is affected, and that influences our kids and their childhoods and how they move through life. So, as cliched as it is, we do need to fill our own cups. And some evidence-based ways that we can do this that are most impactful are good social supports. Again, another cliche, but the cliches have wisdom. It does take a village. You do need social support. Having people to support you emotionally, having childcare, people to tag in for you when you're overwhelmed. Those are all very important and really great ways to build resilience for families. Internal strengths, we touched on this a little bit earlier. These are things that I personally go to therapy for, but it's our ability to process what's happening, our ability to problem solve, to seek help, to look for resources, to take things as they are, not catastrophize, etc. And then socioeconomic resources, that's part of what we do here at our organization, is trying to meet some of those needs. There are other ways that we can do this. We support educational attainment. Higher education usually leads to higher socioeconomic resources, which will hopefully help this. And that's in the next bullet point, education. And then, very interestingly, self-esteem and what's called parenting self-efficacy, which is essentially, do you think you're a good parent? Do you think you can make a difference in your child's development, in their childhood? And do you feel good about your parenting? Turns out that people that have higher parental self-esteem and higher parenting efficacy or views of parenting self-efficacy tend to have children that turn out better, which is such a fun fact. Um, and then mirroring this a little bit, key protective factors for our kids are responsive parenting. That is that safe, secure attachment. That is meeting their needs, supporting their development, supporting their development and enriching their education. High quality childcare and education, very key, another component of our work in this program. Emotional availability from the parent, that is tied to responsive parenting, as is enrichment. So on the next page, we are going to talk about some of our local resources for addressing these. Education, CSU and Front Range Community College both have programs or departments and web pages for student parents and what kind of resources you can find there. The Colorado Department of Higher Education has resources for student parents and non-traditional students. FAFSA is where you go to qualify for Pell Grants and possibly loans. Childcare, Women Give is a wonderful scholarship that offers childcare scholarships to single mothers who are pursuing higher education. ECCLC also offers a child care fund. CCAP is the state's child care subsidy, and then there is also Universal Preschool, which does give income eligible or students with IEPs or English language learners additional hours of free, high quality, state sponsored preschool, or I should say pre-kindergarten. Mental health resources that are local, Summit Stone, I believe they do sliding scale, CSU, Center for Family and Couple Therapy. They do also accept Medicaid, and they offer a sliding scale. You work with, I don't think the term is interning, but you work with marriage and family therapy students who are under supervision of licensed faculty. The Parent-Child Interaction Center is a wonderful resource. They have a ton of therapists. Quite a few of their therapists offer after hours and even weekend appointments, which is very helpful. And then Child First is a pretty fantastic evidence-based program for children and families who've experienced pretty significant trauma. They offer mental health support to the child and the family in a two-generational model, which the evidence shows is incredibly impactful. Um, Enrichment that helps support, I think it helps support connection and joy between parent and child. Um, but it does also support cultural enrichment and it's learning opportunities out in the real world, which is always great for kids' development. Fort Collins Recreation, very great affordable recreation programs of all kinds of varieties. They also offer programs where if you receive SNAP or EBT, you can get discounted admission. Same thing with Museum of Discovery. There are summer programs at CSU, and then finally, Museums for All is a wonderful program where I think it's something like several thousand member museums will allow you free or significantly reduced admission if you are a SNAP or EBT recipient, which is just wonderful. The Denver Zoo is one, Children's Museum in Denver, and the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, if you make it all the way down there, all fantastic learning opportunities for kids. Thank you so much. Like I said, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or are looking for additional resources, please reach out. One of our key mission-driven impact activities is trying to meet needs where and how the community says they need to be met. So please flag anything for my attention if you have comments, questions, or concerns. Thank you.